Okay, so we have our constellation info. Each constellation has an array of stars which references the points in space that these lines are drawn. Now, I'm happy to say that how we're going to go about rendering our constellations is very similar to how we rendered the stars. So the workflow will be the same, as in we're going to create a mesh for each constellation. Then for each mesh, we'll create an object, and each object will have a material with a shader that we'll write, and then we'll go ahead and instantiate it. So let's have a look at how we're going to create that mesh. We will be using a topology called lines, a line mesh topology, and this is such a blessing because it works in just the same way that our constellation databases work. I'll show you what I mean by that. So it says here that every two indices in the mesh index buffer form a line. So you might remember with our stars, we had indices just going from 0 to the length of stars. With the mesh topology of lines, we just have a 0 to 1 would form a line between those two indices. 1 to 2 would form a line between those two. And I'll show you why we're really happy to have that, because if we have a look at our constellation's HIP files, this is the data that we're working with. This is just how they work. So as in, so this is index 0. Wait, I'll see if I can get it closer here. Okay, so index 0 being 26727. This would be a line from this one to this one, and then a line from this one to this one, then a line from this one to this one, etc. Which would be 0 to 1, 2 to 3, 4 to 5 in terms of indices. Which is, and it's exactly how mesh topology of lines works. The one thing I just want to be clear about is that sometimes we got two copies of the references to the star info. This is okay. This isn't some this is not inefficient or anything, because it's only a reference to the star info. It's not a literal copy of the data. Yes. Okay. So let's go ahead and create it. So in our scripts, we're going to create a new script. Oh, by the way, brand new keyboard. Yeah, I'm hoping that this one's going to be a little bit quieter. It's got compare it to this. This is the old one I was using. It's got like these big mechanical keys. This new one's it's quite nice, and it's Bluetooth. Okay. Anyway, we're going to go into scripts and asset generators, and we're going to create a new class. This is called a Constellation. Not in caps lock. Constellation mesh generator. .cs. Now I mentioned that this is a similar workflow to what we've already been doing. In fact, it's so similar that I'm going to open my star mesh generator and I'm going to do a fair bit of copying and pasting. In fact, this is a really lazy way. Oh, I shouldn't do it. It's bad practice. I was going to do a big old copy paste. I won't do a big old copy paste. It's not smart. Okay, so I'm going to use Unity Engine. I'm also going to use system.link. We'll also, you know what? Bugger this. I know it's dumb, but we'll figure out what bugs there are and work through them as we find them. All right, we'll create an asset menu. This is going to be called Constellation Mesh. Constellation Mesh, okay. It doesn't have a star database loader. It has a constellation database loader. Constellation database loader. And stars per mesh. We don't need any of that. Generate assets. Yep. Now what's it complaining about? Oh, right. Constellation mesh. Constellation mesh generator. And we're not using any of this. All right. So how are we going to generate the meshes? Well, first of all, we'll start off with the data. So we'll say database dot constellations dot select Is that it? Yep. Okay. So for each constellation, we're going to create a mesh. So we'll say select constellation C create mesh, and we'll pass in the constellation C dot stars and also the constellation dot name. So as in the mesh will have the same name as the constellation. And then once we created our constellations, all we're going to do is we're going to save it. So for each, I'm going to say CM because it's a constellation mesh. And perhaps for this other one, I'll call this one CI for constellation info. Okay, constellation mesh asset utility dot save mesh asset. Okay, folder, and we'll pass in the folder path. Remember, the folder path is what's and also pass in the mesh CM. The folder path is what's our asset generator declares, and this inherits from asset generator. Okay, now creating the meshes, it's not exactly the same because instead of saying it's similar. Instead of saying a mesh topology of lines or points, we're having a mesh topology of lines. Now, there's a lot of almost identical code here, and you might be thinking like, oh, should we really be copying and pasting? Shouldn't we be clever and have some sort of inheritance or construction of objects? I'm going to say no. The reason being that at the moment this create mesh is identical or almost identical. The thing is that as we go along, we might want our constellations and our stars to behave differently. We're going to be passing more interesting information into our meshes down the road. So yeah, this looks good. Let's go ahead and try it out. Oh, I haven't even explained it. This is why I say I don't really want to copy and paste, because I get like the laziness just snowballs. Okay, so what are we doing? We're saying for each star in the mesh. For each star, all right, so take a breath. We have our constellations. Each constellation info has a group of stars. Now those stars are the indices of the lines drawn. Now for each of those stars, we're going to set the vertices of the mesh. So in the case of the Southern Cross, I'll just open that up again. In case of the Southern Cross, you'd have like this, be 0, 1, 2, 3, and that would be the indices. And then we're just literally saying the indices of the line topology are correspond to what lines we're drawing. 0 to 1 and 2 to 3. And we're declaring this mesh topology of lines, and that's it. And then, of course, we're saving the mesh. So yeah, so let's try it out. I'm going to go ahead and open Unity. Alright, so I'm going to create a asset generator, constellation mesh generator. I'm just going to call it constellation mesh generator. The folder path, now it can't be the same path as the star mesh generator, because when we do our instance manager, you remember our instance manager deletes everything inside that path. It'll when you create the stars, it'll delete everything in there. Then when you create the constellations, it'll delete all the stars in there. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this to star meshes. Star meshes to star prefabs. And I'm going to also update our, let's see, who's referencing that? The prefab generator is referencing, okay, so I'm just going to do a quick little update of the star prefab generator. Now needs to know where that new path is. And the star mesh generator needs to know where its new path is. Pressing Control-Alt-C to copy the path, not the file. Alright, now our Constellation Mesh Generator, we're going to create a new folder called Constellation Meshes. And our Constellation Mesh Generator, we'll need to know where that is. Pass that in there. Now the database, we've only got one Constellation database. I don't think there's anything in there at the moment. Oh, there is? Okay, it did serialize when we closed the program and opened it again. That's nice. And now let's go ahead and generate it. I'll have a look at my Constellation meshes, and you'll notice that we do get a little rendering of it. See if I can make that any bigger. Okay, so we have, what's this one called? Matakareu. Taki o Atahi. It's kind of cool. Tau Toro. I mean, remember, we're getting this data in 3D, which is kind of awesome. I'm not sure, I don't even know which way they're supposed to be seen from, which direction. Like, what about that one? Yeah. Anyway, we'll know that once we get all our info together.